Professor Lawrence Young, virologist and professor of molecular oncology at the University of Warwick. He joins us now from the UK. Thanks so much for being with us. I mean, hearing this dispute happen and knowing that the production is behind, the EU is probably not going to get what it ordered, how much does that really hold the overall global effort back in getting us all vaccinated and getting us to that critical mass of vaccination so that we can get past the pandemic?
Well, I think the availability of these vaccines across the world was always going to be a problem. I mean, the sheer scale of the required vaccines in terms of doses is unprecedented. And it's no surprise that this is really stretching the complex manufacturing process required for all of these different vaccines. So this is a real issue that is going to be a problem, I think, across the globe.
Okay, was there, I mean, from what you can see, was there a better way to do this? You know, first to maximize production, you know, perhaps by engaging generic producers in developing countries, and then also the second-fold problem, getting distribution settled more coherently.
Well, I think there are a couple of things to say about that. I mean, one is, of course, these are very complex things to manufacture, and each batch that you manufacture has to be cleared for safety. And so that puts a whole set of different procedures in place. So it's something that you can farm out to other manufacturers, but you have to be absolutely convinced that the product that's coming out, this biological product, is safe and effective. I also think we've got an issue here where we cannot rely on 2 or 3 different vaccines. We need dozens of different vaccines. If we're serious about covering vaccinations across the globe, then we know there are already at least 12 vaccines in late stage development, and we need to think about more different types of vaccines that can still have the same efficacy but can spread the burden of manufacture further and just give us the doses that we need to vaccinate as many people as possible.
Okay, and you know, on the other end of the equation, though, there's also what the governments have done to make sure that whatever vaccines are out there, that they actually are finally injected into their citizens. We've seen delays all around the globe. The UK has been trying to open really and get these UK mass vaccination centers online. They've started, but it really isn't going as quickly as planned. And is there a danger in that gives the virus time to adapt to the vaccines it is seeing at a slower pace?
Yeah, so we do find ourselves in a very delicate time now, because you're absolutely right. The UK has done extremely well, vaccinating between 2 and 3 million people a week. That's great, but we know that vaccine supplies are a bit lumpy, shall we say. It's sometimes difficult. And we also know that in other countries, setting up the infrastructure for efficient delivery of both the first dose and the very important second dose is going to be challenging. And there is a concern mixed in with all of this that if you are giving people only part immunity, and if the virus is still out there and transmitting itself across lots of different people, you're going to increase the chances of generating more variants of the virus that could lead to problems with the efficacy of vaccines. So we're in a bit of a race at the moment, and what's important is that we do absolutely everything we can to get vaccines out to people, but in the meantime that people also stick to the sort of the measures that we have in the UK at the moment of social distancing and being careful about hand hygiene and wearing face masks. I think we've got to think about the balance of, you know, waiting for a vaccine but also protecting our different communities from infection.
Taking whatever measures possible. But from what you've seen so far, do you see an end game in sight anytime soon? Do you have an estimate?
No, I worry a lot about this whole business about vaccine supply and distribution. I think even with the best will in the world, we may well get to a position that come the end of this year, most of the well-developed world will be vaccinated. That's a distinct possibility, actually, even with the current problems we're facing. The big issue is nobody's safe till everybody's safe from this infection. And so we need to work really hard to make sure that low and middle income countries also have access to the vaccine. And that's a real challenge. And there are disturbing estimates at the moment that even if we are successful with rolling out vaccination across the world, less than a quarter of the low and middle income countries will be vaccinated by the end of this calendar year.
Right.
And that's going to result in problems.
I've got another minute with you, so I wanted to draw on that because there's a lot of concern about getting people in poor countries actually vaccinated. The EU and other wealthy countries are being monitored, for hoarding or vaccine nationalism, it's been titled. But given that Europe has the worst case numbers per capita, shouldn't those, they also happen to be the wealthiest countries, but shouldn't they be given priority just based on their numbers to get vaccinated first before developing countries with lower caseloads are addressed?
There is an element of truth of that, and I think in reality that's what's going to happen. It's just that if you start to look at caseloads now in other countries, for instance, sub-Saharan Africa, where we were perhaps a little bit complacent about the levels of infection because they're now increasing quite rapidly in certain parts of Africa, and we still have enormous problems in Latin America. And it's in those areas, as we've heard from Brazil and South Africa, that these variants are being thrown up. And so I think it's difficult to take your eye off any of this, really. But I think you're absolutely right. I think what's likely to happen is that we'll get vaccine cover for the most vulnerable in the well-developed countries. But we do need to really seriously consider how we support COVAX, that international effort from the World Health Organization in rolling out vaccines across the globe. And the only solution to that is to look at other vaccines, other types of vaccine. We cannot rely on just 3 or 4 different types of vaccines.
Okay, Professor Young, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.